And so I'm going to spend a lot of time in Enoch, but I want to point out a couple of things. And also, I would like to hear some thoughts from you too, because I know you've been looking at this stuff for years. So feel free to chime in, especially if I overlook something. But in First Enoch 10:11 through 12, and uh, basically God is telling the prophet what to say to the watchers, and we'll get into that on which prophet is he actually talking to. But in verse 11 says, "And the Lord said to Michael, go bind some. How do you say his name? I don't know how to say that.
Well, you could Semijaza or Semiyaza,
Yeah,
or I should
Semyaza.
say maybe Shimiyaza, but then the paleo would probably get rid of the E's and put more A's in there.
Yeah, and if you could drop down to the next slide, I'm gonna read from that text. It says, "Go bind Semyaja and his associates who have united themselves with women, so as to have defiled themselves with them in all their uncleanliness. And when their sons have slain one another, and they have seen the destruction of their beloved ones, bind them fast for 70 generations in the valley of the earth, till the day of their judgment and their consummation, till the judgment that is forever and ever is consummated." Now, what's interesting about this, I'm going to point this out, but it's talking about there's going to be 70 generations after they see this great travesty of their sons killing each other, and they're going to be uh, basically locked up in the valley of for 70 generations. And then, if you go to the next slide, this is where it gets kind of interesting. Um, it says in verse 13, "In those days they shall be led off to the abyss of fire." Okay, so after the 70 generations, they're going from one place to another location. And this is really interesting because you see this in Jude and also in Second Peter, that the angels that sinned have been locked in Tartarus. So they're talking from the abyss of fire persuasion here. So they were moved, right? So when were they moved? Because it does paint a picture of two different locations. You're going to be here for 70 generations, and then we're going to put you over here in the abyss. It doesn't say that they're cast in the fire. It just says the abyss of fire. And I don't think those are the same things. And it says, and to torment and the prison in which they shall be confined forever. And whoever shall be condemned and destroyed with from them henceforth be bound together with them to the end of all ages or generations, and destroy all the spirits and all the reprobate and the children of the watchers, because they have wronged mankind. Um, and then this is an interesting text because it does seem to imply that at the end of the 70 generations, they're moved, and it almost sounds like they're placed over the fire that they're going to be cast into at the end. That's how it comes across, and I think that's a legitimate question. So the question is when did the 70 occur? Well, there's something that comes up that I'm scratching my head, Noah, and maybe you have some better insight on this. But if you go to the next slide, verses 1 through 3, this whole text starts off with the Most High speaking to an angel, to Lamech, who's, that's the son of Methuselah, who's the father of Noah. And it says, "Go to Noah and tell him in my name," and he basically tells him this revelation of things that are coming. Now, this is kind of interesting because is this text really talking to Noah? There are some who actually think it may be Enoch. Later on in Enoch, and I'm sure you remember this. Remember when God sends Enoch to talk to the Watchers, and the Watchers try to send him a message to God and everything?
Yeah.
Enoch brings up a lot of the points that are made in this text, and it almost as if he received the message and he's talking to him. So I would kind of like to bring up why this is a big deal. But is Enoch 10 really addressing Noah? And maybe so, but here's some thoughts to consider. If you can go to slide 7, it says um, Enoch is an interesting text because we don't have a lot of full complete copies of it. I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, but mainly the full complete version comes from the Ethiopian
Yeah.
text.
I
And
think so.
yeah,
I'm not an Enoch text scholar, just so everybody knows, but I think so.
well, I used to be under the persuasion like, oh, they found it in the Dead Sea Scrolls, right? And so I went to find out what they had, and it's fragments. It's not the entire thing, but the fragments that are there do line up with the Ethiopian text, and there's enough to see that there's giants and fallen angels, but uh, it's you're missing a lot of Enoch. So we don't really have a lot of old copies of Enoch. Um, and the problem with that and with verifying text, and this is one reason why I put so much time into looking at different translations and everything of the Old Testament and New Testament, is you can have a pretty good verification process to find out if anything's been altered. Like one of the things we talked about last time was the change of chronology from the Masoretic to the Septuagint, or actually the Septuagint to Masoretic.
Yeah.
And so if you don't have older manuscripts to validate, people can change stuff. And one of the main motivators to change the chronology of the Septuagint is because the chronology of the Septuagint actually points to Messiah. So whenever you find something that helps point, say, hey, Jesus, he's the one, there tends to be kind of almost a background conspiratorial move to alter things. And so uh, there's logical reasons why perhaps the original Enoch text may have referred to Enoch and not Noah here. I could be wrong, it's okay. But if it's pointing to a prophecy of Jesus, there is motive to alter text. And we've seen that before. So I'm just putting that out there as a possibility. But if you go to the next slide, and I'm not going to read all this because I
Well,
can't
and
pronounce.
I'm just trying to think before you move on. Maybe you're still addressing this point, but
Yeah,
what other, if it is Noah, so we'll just go back up here again
yeah,
real quick, and it says you highlighted there, go to Noah. Do we have any other, because I've seen that before too, and it does seem kind of, it is, I don't know if I want to say jarring,
yeah.
but it does seem like there's not context outside of this for Noah. Is there? I mean, have you seen anything that could, any other verses go like, okay, I could see why Noah is supported there, or is it kind of just an obscure one off?
No, because in the immediate context, if you just keep reading down to chapter 15, it's all about Enoch. And if you ever just read the part where he takes the letter from the watchers, the things that he brings up are stuff that are stated in chapter 10. So
Yeah.
it doesn't really, there seems like a big disconnect.
It
And
also it also lines up with the Book of the Giants, which is a Dead Sea Scroll text, which the same thing where the giants and the quote unquote monsters, whatever they are,
yeah,
maybe those are the T-Rexes. I don't know. I don't really know. Maybe they're like talking. They had like missiles on them and stuff. I don't really know. But
Dino
they
Riders.
yeah, you never really know. They were all sitting around talking, and they all
Mhm.
had these dreams about the flood, which was to come, and they're all concerned about it. And Enoch shows up at the end, and he prophesies this for them too. And
Yeah.
at the end of it, it ends with them going like, we could repent and we could stop this, or we like, nah, whatever. We'll just take our chances with it.
Right.
Um,
And
all
so
right,
this is a perhaps a strong argument of yeah, if you can go down to slide 8 to where it says the 77 generations from Adam to Jesus. And I don't want to read this because but
wait,
in the
is this
Gospel of Luke in chapter 3, 23 to 28, it lists 77 generations. And if you can scroll a little bit to the bottom of the text, because I highlight um, Adam to Enoch. So this is a total of 77 generations. But from Adam to Enoch, and we see this in the book of Jude, are 7 generations. So if you subtract the 7 generations from the 77, you have 70 generations from Enoch to Jesus. Okay. I think that's a big deal. And I also think that's a good argument to say that Enoch 10 should actually read that this is being said to Enoch and not Noah.
and this is where
Um,
you're connecting to the with Joshua. There's a conspiracy wherever it involves him.
right.
The things seem to kind of mysteriously,
Get altered.
conveniently, yeah, get altered, just like we saw with the Greek LXX timeline,
Yeah.
where they've completely moved it to look like the Messiah shouldn't have even shown up for, I guess maybe like the 1500s, I guess, around then, or
Mhm. Yeah,
AD.
around that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because they move everything from about 1,500 years off. So, yeah, you're
Yeah.
right. The Messiah should show up around 1500 AD in our timeline.
King Henry VIII is a contender, or Martin Luther, or uh, Christopher Columbus. Maybe they're all contenders.
Yeah, or it's satanic, and it was actually the coming of Messiah is actually the release of the devil.